Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. Hey guys, real quick, before we jump into the episode, I need you to do the 3 S's for me. What is that? First of all, I need you to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss an episode of our podcast. Number 2, I need you to share it with your family and friends. Don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else. Lastly, I need you to say something. Leave us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to see from us, what you like, what you don't like. We are open to your suggestions. We want to know everything that you want to let us know about the podcast. All right. Now, get back to the episode. All right. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and we believe that the relationship between a dad and his daughter is one of the most important relationships in a young woman's life. And therefore, our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with EJ, not Deal to Heal. That's the other podcast. To the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you listen, like, subscribe, and share our podcast on all of our social media platforms and also your podcast listening platforms, as well as make sure you guys are checking us out on our YouTube channel. We can be found under the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube. Again, that's the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network on YouTube, where you will find the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, which you are listening to now, as well as our partner podcast, should I say our big brother podcast, which is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And on that podcast, I talk to my guests, and I have discussions on how to help us to heal in every area of our lives. Currently, at the time of taping this, we are over 200 episodes on that podcast. So you guys definitely want to go there to check out that podcast as well. That's the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. But we are here at the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, under which both can be found under our YouTube channel, the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. So make sure you guys go and check us out there. Really quickly, our product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast. And the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase. And so our product of the week this week is our Purpose Journal, as well as our Purpose Planner, because I believe we should journal to keep track of where we've been and where we are, as well as plan for our future. You can get your copy of the Purpose Journal and the Purpose Planner off Amazon. The links are in the descriptions below. Make sure you guys go there and check that out. Also, there's a lot of great information in the descriptions, so make sure you guys go and check that out as well. But today we are blessed, just like any other day, we are blessed with a guest, Miss Angela. How you doing?
I am doing great, and I'm sitting there thinking, man, you have got an empire going here.
I'm trying to build one. I am really trying to build one.
Good for you. Good for you.
So first of all, Angela, let me say thank you for being on, because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you took out the time to be here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. And so we're going to jump right in it. Do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Ugh, that's a big one. But anyway, I am born and raised in Saskatoon, Canada, and I am born to immigrant parents. So both of my parents are from China, but they came over at very different times. My mother came over when she was 8, and settled in small town Saskatchewan. And my dad came over as a master's student. So he was about 28 and they met at university. So my mother didn't have too much of an accent. She's very Canadian, kind of like me, but my dad was very Chinese. And so I grew up with those two sort of cultural conflicts, I guess, but still rich.
Right.
So I have a background in engineering, and I was a petroleum engineer for probably about 16 years. I had an international career where I worked in Canada and the Netherlands and Brunei in Southeast Asia. And I was popping out kids along the way. So after the third one, we decided to come home and live on the same acreage that I grew up on and raise our kids to really identify as Canadian, because it's difficult when you're traveling. There's a concept called third culture kids who
Mhm.
sometimes feel a little lost in the world, and we just thought, let's go back home and raise these kids with some roots. So when I got here, it was really nice to be with my family, because when you're overseas, you only see them really intensely for, once a year, and you don't get the little check-ins, the coffees, the teas, the birthday
Right.
parties. So when we got back, we were able to build that, and that was really nice with the kids. And unfortunately, 3 years after we got back, my father passed away due to cancer. So I was really pleased that I was able to have those 3 years of just casual, dropping in and seeing each other. That's a blessing. As a result, it caused me to really refocus my life. The death of a father is, for me, it was the closest, the hardest loss that I had experienced to date. And so it was a lot of self-reflection. And as a result, I did a lot of self-help, did a lot of personal development, and I discovered my own way of thinking, which I called inner engineering. So it brought me from external validation right into internal, where all the power is. And now I am a relaxed productivity advocate, and I run online courses, and I have a membership, and I help busy professionals just see the logic in slowing down, so that, at the end of your life, you're not going, oh, did I miss something? And
Yeah.
just to stop and enjoy life throughout the way, throughout the journey, because my dad was really good at that. And that's really what I wanted to talk to you today about, was everything I learned from my dad, and how it's shaped my life today.
Yeah.
So today I'm doing, the digital entrepreneurship thing. I am an author and a publisher as well. So I got lots of irons in the fire, so to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Good. 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 I definitely want to. I definitely want to uh, dive into all of those things. And I can. I'm thinking about what you were saying about even with the kids and having um, the travel, traveling and not really be able to find that identity somewhat. Because I think the same thing kind of happens with people who are in the military, who family
Yeah,
travels a lot. It's like they don't have those roots to fall back on because they move around so much. So yeah, I think that
for
was a
sure.
great idea to be like, all right, let's go back home. You know what I mean? I
For
think
sure.
that's amazing. So let's start there. Let's go back to, you mentioned about your dad's. What is some of the, first of all, are you an only child or do you have other siblings?
I'm a middle child of three, so I have an older sister and a younger brother. And something I'll add is that despite my dad being very Asian, and he had beautiful writing, Chinese script writing,
Mm,
but we never learned Chinese. And that's
yeah.
because he spoke Cantonese and my mom spoke a little village dialect, Toisanese. And so they didn't understand each other at the beginning when they first met. So while we were young, we just spoke English at home. And as the years passed, they got to know each other's Chinese. But, as in some relationships, it got a little bit more argumentative as the years passed. And so when your parents are arguing in Chinese, you kind of block them out. So I never really learned Chinese very well. So I'm the worst example of a Chinese person. I just look it.
Right. Well, that is actually really common amongst people whose parents come from different countries, especially like here in America. I meet uh, lots of Hispanics that I work with, that I'm friends with, that don't speak Spanish. You know what I mean? And they be like,
Yeah.
oh, like we're like 3 or 4 generations in. They were like, we're like, we don't speak Spanish like their parents do, and some of them be like, I can understand it. You know
Yes.
what I'm saying?
It's
But they
kind
don't
of too
speak it.
bad. It's really too bad. And I guess because I don't speak Chinese, and also my husband is a small town Scottish Irish heritage guy, having my kids in closer proximity to my extended Chinese family is also something I wanted, because it's nice for them to get to know some of the culture,
Yeah.
even though I can't give it all to them. So, yeah, that's part of the decision as well.
Yeah, that's great, and I think it's good for just for to learn multiple languages anyway, because the world is so vast. And I'm guilty of it too. I took uh German, and I took Spanish in high school. Passed them both, enjoyed them both. But don't ask me to speak either of them at this point,
Yeah.
because I don't know. I've been thinking
Well,
about going back and relearning, like taking those courses over as an adult,
yeah.
to learn those languages. But I think it's good to for us to know multiple languages, just as a people.
Well, and it's kind of a fun fact about me is my best second language is Dutch, even though I don't look anything like a Dutch person, but because I worked there, and
Right.
I worked in the oil and gas field, and sometimes the workers didn't speak English. And so it's really nice to be able to go to the well site or the rigs and be able to speak to them.
Mhm.
And of course, when you live there for 6 years, you've got the TV, and the nice thing, they have subtitles, so I can hear the English, but I can read the Dutch, and I slowly understood it and got to be pretty fluent by the time I left. Now that was about 20 years ago, so I've lost it. But when I go back, um, I've lost the fluency, but I still can converse with my Dutch friends. It's just not as good. And then my second language, I guess, that's after Dutch is French. And that's just because, being Canadian, I did do an exchange. So, just for your benefit, if you really want it in your head, you got to be forced to speak it, not just, scholastically learn it on paper. Because when you're forced to speak it and you sweat through trying to get the right verb tenses and stuff, it really sinks in your gray matter a little deeper.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's why yeah, I think that's great, and I would like to go back again to take those course. I don't know if I'll take German over,
But
but I
Spanish
definitely
is
would like
really
to take
helpful.
Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely want to take Spanish again. But so let's get into your story. We talked a little bit about excuse me. You talked about your mom coming first and then your dad coming later, and you being the middle child. So, what is someone like the earliest memories of you with your dad?
Mm. Well, I guess one of my earliest memories is I was 6 years old, and he was doing his PhD, and we were over in London, England. And I remember he took me. He loved to jog or run, and
Mhm.
he would go every Saturday. He'd go to a park to run. And one Saturday, he invited me to go with him. So because I was an early riser and my siblings weren't, so I decided, yeah, I'll go with him. And it was just the feeling of really early in the morning, my hand in his, and we were walking to this park. And then when we got there, he said, "Well, come and run with me." So we ran for a bit, and of course, I couldn't run the same as he did. And eventually he said, "Well, if you don't want to run anymore, go play on the playground. And I played on the playground while he did his laps. And it was just a really nice memory. And in those times, when a PhD student makes nothing, he created a
Mhm.
lot of really nice memories for us. He and my mom, we lived in an apartment for students and their families. And I remember Christmas, we didn't have enough money for a tree. So he found some shiny red and green wrapping paper and he cut out a tree shape out of the green stuff and taped it on the wall. And then the red, he made little Christmas balls and we put our gifts underneath that paper tree. So those are really nice times that I had with him and my mom. That Yeah, and he had to write his whole dissertation while three kids played behind him. So his focus is was pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's one of the things I talk about too, especially to our dads, is to make sure that we're taking out those, that time to create those memories because it's not always the big things that we remember most. It's those small things, those little intimate things. And I share with one of my guests. One of my guests previously was on, and we were talking about him taking his kids to Disney World, one of them, Disneyland or Disney World, whichever
Yeah.
one it was. And there just was a moment where he was walking back to the car because he went to go get something, and his daughter, one of his daughters, was like, "I want to go with you." So he said, "Okay," and so they kind of went, walking back to the car, and they passed this one of the little stands that had the Mickey ears, the Mickey Mouse ears, and his daughter was like, Dad, I want to get these ears, and got a pair for himself and a pair for her, and they took a
Oh,
couple of pictures and things of that nature. And he said, years later, his daughter still has those ears, and when they talk about different things and even going to Disney World, she don't talk about like seeing Mickey Mouse and all that stuff. She talks about that moment where they had, with those ears. And I think, I'd like to point that out, with our dads on this podcast, especially that we're taking out the time to make those memories, to
yeah.
have those moments. It's not always the grand things, like, oh, we went on these, trips and this and that, but like, no, me and my dad went for a walk. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They got ice cream, on a regular basis, and just share some things in common. And I think those things are more valuable to our families than the grand things that we think sometimes that they would appreciate when in the moment maybe, but in the long run, those things don't hold up.
No, that's so true. And, just for the record, we never went to Disneyland as a child. I think the first time I went to Disneyland, I was 42, something like that. No, maybe 34.
Yeah. I went when I got married and I was 27 or something like that. So we didn't even have kids. I was the kid at that
You
at
were
that time, right?
But I was too, we had 2 kids at the time, and I remember it was actually Hong Kong Disney, and just skipping through the roads because it's so happy.
Mhm.
All the music and, not going there as a child, you can really experience it and appreciate it as an adult.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go back, talking about your dad, and as you think about, because I love the memory that you shared, again, taking out that time to be together, spend some time together with some things that, like I said, that stands out more than the big things. It's like, no, this little moment, meant more to me than, you know, maybe some other thing that everyone else might have think was grand. Is there some other significant stories that you would like to share um, that kind of molded you, or you could just kind of share as you wish, some of the things and some of the lessons that you learned from your father that has molded you into the person that you are today.
Yeah, well, there's so many, and it's hard to really pinpoint because when someone's just there,
Mhm.
I really learn a lot by his example. And so he doesn't necessarily have to, sit me down and have a lesson. It's like
Yeah.
watching how he conducts himself. There was one moment I realized he was dealing with more than he'd ever told me in terms of racism. And I was cleaning his desk one day. I'm not sure why, but he had, those a little rectangle full of little drawers where you put like paper clips and whatever. It
Mhm.
was just a tiny
Yeah.
little thing. And on one of the drawers, there was a little article cut out from the paper, and it was a letter to the editor. And so my dad had come to Canada, did his master's. He was hired by the University of Saskatchewan as a cartographer, and he hand drew all of the maps for the Atlas of Saskatchewan, which is a huge contribution to the history of the province. And the letter to the editor was, why does a man from Hong Kong have the right to come and do this Atlas of Saskatchewan? Isn't there someone here, a real Canadian, who could have done it? And it was interesting. He never talked about it, but the fact that it was cut out and it was stuck onto this little drawer, I think he used it for fuel,
Mhm.
quiet fuel, that he knew he was up against racism. He knew he would have to show his worth through his good works. There was no standing on a soapbox to say, that's wrong, I'm good, you should see my credentials. There was nothing of that. It was a quiet, I'm just going to put my head down and work. He never, ever was angry about that. He kind of, I think he just dealt with it. And so when I found that, and I was probably under 10 when I found it, it really instilled in me that some people might be against you in such a huge way that they write a letter to the newspaper about you, but they don't know you. They don't know
Right.
your story. And because they didn't even take the time to learn about you as a person, they're filled with this hatred. And it's just interesting living with that as an undercurrent, that it didn't soil our existence in any way, but I think it was a reality that my dad dealt with maybe more than I had to.
Mhm.
But I found that discovery and the very quiet, the way he dealt with it with that inner strength was an example to me that you can't shout from the rooftops your side if someone has, an opposite view. You just have to prove yourself through your actions. And another thing, which is nearer to the end of his life that kind of made me chuckle was he and my mom bought a magnificent house here in Saskatoon along the river, one of the most prestigious roads in Saskatoon, where everyone walks by and admires the houses. My dad loves gardening, so he was in the front. He wore like this big sun hat, and he's tending to the weeds, and he's doing this stuff. And someone walked up to the house, a salesperson or something, and he said, "Is the owner of the house here?" And my dad just sort of looked at him, and he said, "No, he's not. He's not in right now." And it was that lack of ego. Maybe he just wanted to avoid the salesperson. But there's a lot of people who would say, I'm the frickin' owner.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Like, how could you assume I'm not the owner?
Right.
You know? But he just said, assume the role of the gardener. And that made me laugh because he just didn't have any ego about it. He didn't have any, I gotta show you, I gotta prove this to you. So I think that quiet confidence was something I really I learned through my life watching him.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so I wanna ask another question because you mentioned about your dad passing away, and my condolences for that.
Thank you.
But you mentioned that you were able to have those couple years where you brought your family back and was able to have your kids around. How was he as a grandfather? Because I know a lot of times, the grandfather role is a lot different from the father role, right? And I can even attest to that myself. I have two beautiful granddaughters, and
Aw.
yeah, they my daughter always was good, so I never really had a lot of problems with her growing up. But even that, I think they still get another version of me that that she didn't even get. So with having being able to bring your family back, to spend time with your dad and be around your more immediate family. How was your dad as a grandfather when it came to your kids?
Yeah, my dad was super playful and really liked to pull the wool over their eyes. He loved sort of instilling a bit of magic into their life. And I remember he was very ill, and he was, bedridden at this time. And my youngest was 2-ish, and he would never blow his nose. So my dad said, "Put something in your hand and then say, if you blow your nose, a candy might come out." So I think to this day, my youngest is like kind of, why did I always get stuff out of my nose? I don't know how I was able to fool him all those years, but it was my dad's idea to to do that so that he would blow his nose. And after that, he blew his nose all the time because there was always a little candy that I would grab and he'd be able to get it once he blew his nose. I mean, I don't know why he didn't wonder why it's not full of snot, but hey,
Right.
maybe that's part of the magic of it, right?
Right. I love that. I love that. That is so great. So before we get out of here, because I want to be mindful of our time, but I do want to talk about your book, right? Or one of your books, because we talked a little bit about it before we started recording. That one of your books was kind of inspired by your dad, or at least by a moment that you had with him, that kind of spurred you into this book that you have. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, my father's probably responsible for some warping of my mind because, uh, okay, I'll tell you about the book first. It's called Using Number Two to Get to Number One. And yes, that is the right number two you're thinking about. But the number one is being your best self. So I'm using number two to talk about self help and personal development. And everyone goes, why in the world are you writing about this? Like, what is the relation? And so the story is that on this acreage that I grew up on, we had a
Mhm.
septic tank. And for some reason, the septic pump kept getting plugged. And my dad was very sure is because we're using too much toilet paper. So there was a time where he said, "I'm done with this. You guys are using way too much. From now on, we're going to ration the toilet paper. If you got to do number one, you get 1 square. You got to do number two, 2 squares. But I'm having the toilet paper roll in my pocket. So you must find me." And this we have 10 acres, and he was landscaping it at the time. "You must find me, tell me what you're doing. I will give you the squares, and then you can go on your way." So he hid the toilet paper except for this one roll in his pants that he was gardening around there. So you can imagine, as a child, I have to think about my bathroom habits. Like, okay,
Right.
I gotta pee. Like, which kid can anticipate going to the bathroom, having to find your father, having to tell him what you're gonna do so that you get these
Right.
squares? And I was so innocent that I didn't like lie to him and tell him that I needed to do number two, 10 times a day to stockpile the squares.
Right.
I just followed the rules. That's how your parenting style, your kids just accept it. So we it was difficult, and I think it's because of that that I always think about going to the bathroom way too much. And so
Right.
as I dove into personal development, as I got some more life wisdom, I was like, oh, that's really applicable. Like, I can see the parallels, like, letting things go,
Mhm.
or you've got negative thoughts, they're kind of like your daily deposit. Flush them and don't think about them again, because do you think about yours again? No,
Right.
just let it go. So little things like that, there's so many thoughts and so many stories that I think that's why I was a little bit that leaning that way, which is kind of weird, but it didn't last for too long. It was probably about a week before my mother just lost it, because he also rationed it from her. And there was an argument that probably no one else on the planet has heard, in terms of, you don't understand female anatomy. We need more than two
Yeah.
squares. And then suddenly all the toilet paper was back. But it was long enough to scar me, because of course there was times I couldn't find him. So then you'd
Mhm.
have to just sit on the toilet and yell and hope that, a sibling was close by, they can go for him or stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was just a formative moment in my life.
Yeah, yeah. And so let's go deeper into the book, because I love that backstory. But let's go deeper into the book, where even some of the principles that you teach there, because I recently got into personal development within the last 2 or 3 years, and it definitely has been an amazing journey myself, to learn more about myself and really to get into my thinking habits, and the things that I
Mhm.
do and why I do it. I think that personal development is something that everybody at some point should get into, to really kind of learn themselves and find themselves. And so with that being said, with your book, what are maybe one or two just concepts that you share that could be beneficial to those who may not be on that journey yet of self-development, but definitely something that they can get out of your book?
Okay, well, and a book like this, it's not full of poop jokes. It's not vulgar or anything. They're actually kind of meaningful stories. And when I finished it, I realized it had kind of turned into a love letter to my mother, because uh, my mother always worried about me being constipated, which I didn't understand what that meant, but she actually said, she listened to me going to the bathroom, so she was worried about me. But on that note, it's like the people who worry about your digestive system are the ones who care about you the most. So, whose digestive system do you worry about? It's your family. You're feeding them, you're caring for them. And when someone's born, we monitor the babies. How many diapers do they fill? Because if they're not filling diapers, something's not right. And at the end of our lives, when someone stops eating and drinking, we know the end is near. All of those things um, just show that the digestive system really means love. One of the examples is when you were talking about thoughts. Thoughts are like the things we put in our mouth. So they can either strengthen our system, or they can really cause a little bit of havoc, or just not be good for you. And just because you can eat or drink milk, for instance, we'll go there. If you can drink milk, I can't, because I'm lactose intolerant. So we each have different systems that digest things differently. So, for instance, if you're at a party, you could have a really good time and I could maybe not, just because my filter is like, maybe I had a bad day, maybe I'm tired, maybe I'm hungry, but you're ready to party. So we can be in the exact same environment, hear and experience the exact same things, but take things totally different. So that's the analogy of, you digest things differently than I do. So there's just a whole bunch of stuff like that that is in the books. I've broken up it into 5 sections: eating, digesting, pooping, and affogato, which is the coffee ice cream, like a dessert. And then cleaning up is kind of the farewell notes. But yeah, it's about 3 or 4 chapters per section with stories and things that I think everyone can learn something from.
I love that, and I'm just listening to the analogies as you're saying it, and I'm just like, yeah, it makes so much sense. Even, excuse me, even in the way that you put it, as far as you know, whose poop are you concerned about, or digestive system are you concerned about? Because yes, you are feeding physically your family, but you're feeding them emotionally and
Yes.
intelligently, and all of that at the same time. I love that. I definitely will make sure that I get my copy. And for the audience, for our listeners, I will make sure that I have the links to both of her books, because you have multiple books, but definitely this one, in the descriptions below. So make sure that you guys take the time to go into the descriptions and look up the books as well, that are both available on Amazon. So real quick, Angela, before we get out of here, we're going to make a quick detour to a section that I like to call "Getting to the Core" segment. And so the "Getting to the Core" segment is a segment that I started based off the ebook that I wrote called "The Core Four," which is the core four values that every daughter should get from her father. And when we talk about those core four values, those values are guidance, affirmations, love and affection, and protection. And so when you think about, your dad and the impact that he had on your life, of those four, which would probably be the one that you can identify the most with, um, as a value that he may have instilled in you?
I think I'm going to have to say guidance, except that it was more of a quiet guidance.
Mhm.
So, my dad wasn't. Oh, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. I've lost where you're at because I was looking at the list. So, all of, Asian parents, they're not very demonstrative.
Mhm.
So we don't get the big pats on the back. We don't get the big kiss. We get example.
Right.
He was super consistent. He was very diligent. He did. He was. I can't remember the word now. He was disciplined.
Yeah.
He'd wake up at 5:30, he would garden, he would go swimming, and then he'd have his day. And when he got older, he gardened weird things. He had to learn. In Saskatchewan, we have a very short season, and he was growing cantaloupe. That's kind of weird, but he learned about that. He wanted to paint. He wanted to flip
Mhm.
houses. He never stopped learning, and I think that is a really good gift that he gave me, was always be curious, and always, like, don't have to prove yourself, as we spoke earlier. Just be someone that you are proud of.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I think that's a great, great advice, and great moment to be able to take away. Angela, I thank you so very much for being on, and for sharing your story and your expertise. I love the book. I'm definitely going to get my copy of it. I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, word of inspiration, however you feel, um, to leave something with our audience. Um, and also where we can find you with your social media handles and things of that nature. And so I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about to think about that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure you guys are checking us out on our website, our official website, which is the dealhealfulfill.org. Again, dealhealfulfill.org. Because our mission is to help people, or should I say, my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. And so I do that by public speaking and podcasting, and also with the ebooks that I've written. So make sure you guys go to dealhealfulfill.org in order to check us out there. Also, you guys can check out my new speaker's website, which is Earnest James Speaks Life. And you can find out more information about having me, booking me to come out to be a speaker or a workshop facilitator at your school or organization, or just find out more information as me as a speaker overall. So again, that's EarnestJamesSpeaksLife.com. Make sure you guys go there. Also, check out our ebooks at ebooks.by ejames.com. We talked about the core four, which is the core four values that every daughter should get from her father. But there's also a couple other ebooks that I've written, including From Males to Men, which is sort of a male mentoring ebook for young men. One that I'm very happy about that's doing very well is an ebook that I wrote called Forgiving Me, the 4-Step Guide to Self-Forgiveness. That one is doing very well, and it's also tied to a workshop that we do, which I'll mention it in a second. But you guys can go to ebooks.by ejames.com in order to get your copy of our ebooks, and check out all the other ebooks that we have there. It's probably about 4 or 5 ebooks that are available on that website. So make sure you guys go there. Also, make sure you guys go to dealtohealtees.com, which is our inspirational t-shirt line. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Again, go to healtees.com, dealtohealtees.com, where you can check out our inspirational t-shirts, as well as our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our podcast logos on it. We have one for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast logo with the logo on it, and one also for the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Both of those are available at dealtohealtees.com, as well as our other inspirational t-shirts lines. Last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops bi-monthly talking about everything surrounding forgiveness, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, forgiveness of the world, just everything surrounding forgiveness, because we believe that the topic of forgiveness is a lot of times misrepresented, and a lot of times just not discussed enough. And the more we learn to forgive ourselves and to forgive others and forgive our world, the more we are able to help to heal ourselves and our communities. So whenever you're listening to this, either a workshop just ended or is one coming up. So you can go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next free virtual workshop, or you can go to Eventbrite and just look up Forgiveness Workshop, sponsored by the Forgiveness Mission. But the easiest way would be just to go to forgivenessmission.com in order to sign up for our next free virtual workshop. The workshop is absolutely free, but the information is priceless. So make sure you guys go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next virtual workshop. Oh, man. So again, Angela, I want to say thank you so much for being on, for sharing your story and your expertise. I want you to have the last word, so the floor is yours.
Okay, well, first, I'm going to say you're amazing, but also where people can find me is my podcast. Not my podcast, my website, www.angelajamieson, JAMIESON.com. There's all the information, how to reach me, what I'm doing, and I'm quite active on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me there. So I think in quotes, wisdom I want to leave your audience with is just, the relationship, the girl-dad relationship is super important. But it's really, and it goes into what you just talked about, self-forgiveness. You're not always going to get it right. And that's okay. And I think dads, as much, and all kudos to the dads who want to try and do their best. You're not always going to get it right, but you have to give yourself permission that that's okay, and just make it right. And I think showing your daughter that you don't always get it right, and that you recognize it, and you go and you make it right, and you talk about, this is what was bugging me and I'm sorry. To hear that from your father gives a different level of resilience. It breaks down the walls that people think they have to hold, to look a certain way, to be a certain way, to always be on. Man, release the pressure for everybody to just be you. And sometimes the best you isn't that good that day, and that's okay. So I think that's what I want to leave your listeners with, is self-forgiveness is key, and be okay with not being okay, but just love fiercely.
I love it. I love it. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we believe that the relationship between a dad and his daughter is one of the most important relationships in a young lady's life. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else, that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.